Welcome to the Holistic Success Show. I'm Elizabeth Lozano.
And I'm Dr. Robert Puff. Today we're going to have a guest helping us manage our money successfully.
We'll also be watching clips from Dr. Puff about physical suffering and how we can enjoy life regardless.
And a question from you about how to manage our anxiety well.
Our next question will be about transitioning from motherhood back into having a career. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope you enjoy the show.
I'd like to share a story with you, a wonderful story about a wonderful man. His name was Bill, and he was my father-in-law. And after I got married, I got to really know him, and just a wonderful man that was loved by many people. He worked for a large Fortune 500 company and had worked his way up, and started off with very little and just kept working his way up, got a lot of schooling, a lot of training, kept going, and as the company got rid of, upper management, he just kept moving up and got more and more responsibility until when he reached close to retirement age, he was given so much responsibility, it truly was wearing him out and exhausting him. So finally, he retired, and he moved to a place to live with his mother-in-law, and because they were close and cared for each other. And about a year later, he was diagnosed with cancer, and it wasn't a fast cancer; it was a slow cancer. So he ended up going through a lot of treatments. Spent 4 years of trying to fight it, and he did fight it, and then he passed, and that was several years ago. And what's important in this story is not that he's passed, because many people out there have people that they love that have passed, but what's important about this story is my father-in-law, Bill, he described the last 4 years of his life when he was struggling with pain, going through treatment, and all the things that come along with cancer. As many of you know, most of us don't get away from that disease. Sooner or later we meet someone who has that. He had a lot of suffering, physical suffering that he had to go through, and he had just reached retirement, was looking forward to years and years of traveling and spending time with his wife and his kids and his grandchildren, and then he was diagnosed with cancer, and 4 years later he passed. And yet he described those last 4 years of his life, I heard him say it many times, that they were the best years of his life. How was that possible? Well, what he did is, even though he was physically struggling with things that had to do with the cancer, and sometimes he was in the emergency room many times, and going through chemotherapy and treatments which were physically painful for him, that wasn't what his life was about. He decided, well, if I don't know how long I'm going to live, I'm going to live really well. So what he did is he just really got into his family and his grandchildren and really spent an enormous amount of time loving them, spending time with them, getting to know them better. And when he was getting close to dying, his whole family rallied around him, and my wife had the privilege of being there when he passed. And he was just a very beautiful human being who passed wonderfully. And though he's missed and by many people still, even though it's been many years, he went through that phase of living with cancer and then dying with cancer, and yet saw that as the best years of his life. And he was a very honest man, so it wasn't like he was just saying, well, this is the best because this is all I have left. He truly saw it as the best years of his life, because before that he had raised his family. He came from a difficult childhood, and he had raised his family, and because he didn't have much education, he was going to school while he was raising his family, so he was very busy. And then when he got older, his company kept getting rid of people, so his work got busier and busier and busier, so he never really had time just to enjoy life. So when he got cancer, retired and got cancer, he really started realizing what was important to him. It was his family and being with them, and he spent a ton of time with his family, and they got to spend a lot of time with him. And it was a beautiful existence, because he found, even in suffering, he was able to find peace, find joy of living. And if he could find that, no matter what you are going through or what any of us end up going through later in our lives, we too can find that, Because in science, there's a rule that if one person on the planet can do it, that means anyone can do it. We may not all do it, but it's a possibility. So in the next episode, a little bit, I'll talk more about how we can do it. But just know that Bill lived very well, even though he was suffering, even though he was dying. Peace.
Our first question comes to us from Bob P. in Sioux City, Iowa, and he writes in, I'm starting to get anxious around people, and I know it can get worse. I don't want to get to the point where I can't leave my house. Any suggestions?
Hi, Bob. It really is a good question because a lot of people around the world struggle with anxiety, which is caused by stress. So a lot of what happens is, though, when we start feeling stress, we start kind of creating a story with that, and that's more the anxiety part of it. Anxiety is more in your head. What's happening in here that cause you to worry? And as you worry, saying, well, is this going to get worse? I know people that get housebound and people that can never function anymore. Am I going to get that bad? And that thinking is actually what will cause you more stress. It's like when you worry about something, the worry gets worse. So the first thing is to acknowledge, okay, I may be feeling stress and I can do things to alleviate that stress, but I'm not going to create a story with this stress. I think that's one of the greatest things you can do. Acknowledge that, be aware of that, then work towards alleviating the stress. I love exercise as one way to alleviate stress. When you're feeling anxious, go for a walk, go to the gym, do something physical to dissipate that stress. And the second thing that I really love is meditation. Meditation is a fabulous way to alleviate stress. So if you start meditating on a regular basis, I think you'll just find it fighting against all that stress and anxiety and really making your body feel better.
You know, Bob, I think it's really, really great that you're asking us this question because we live in a society that is so quick to try and cover up what's going on. We have so many medications to deal with anxiety, but they don't really deal with anxiety. They just mask the symptoms. And so basically that anxiety is trying to tell you something. Something is going wrong within you. Something's going on there, and you need to pay attention to it. Sometimes it's really hard to get in touch with what's going on, and you may need a little bit of assistance, perhaps going to therapy so you can kind of look within to really find out what's going on. You'd be surprised. We've got stuff in our subconscious that we aren't even aware of, and it's really helpful in therapy sometimes. It's somebody that can help pull that stuff out of you. So get in touch with what's going on. Get in touch with why you're feeling that way in the first place, and find positive ways to deal with that before it gets bad. And like I said, I'm really glad that you're asking this question now and that you're watching this show, because it means that you're really trying to find healthy ways to deal with things. Listen to our podcast. We've got the podcast Meditation for Health, and we've also got the CD that you can listen to, Meditation for Health and Happiness, to help you on your journey. So thank you so much for your question. It's a really, really great one.
Yeah, thank you, Bob. It really is, and good luck to you.
I'd like to welcome Curtis Hill to the show. He is a certified financial planner and author of the book Poor No More, Wealth is Within Reach. So thank you so much for being a guest on our show.
Thank you for having me.
Yes.
Delighted to be here.
Great. So why don't you tell us about this book that you wrote and how one gets to be poor no more?
Well, it's all about your relationship with money. It's unlearning some of the things that maybe society and Madison Avenue has taught you, and instead learning how to think for yourself and how you can get ahead by maybe doing things a little different than how most people do things and how most people automatically spend their money and are influenced by outside forces that are really trying to separate you from your money.
So such as, trying to keep up with the Joneses type deal?
Well, exactly. There's a lot of people who buy things just for status.